My son promised to move me into his home after my husband died. But when I sold everything and arrived at his door, his wife refused to let me in. "She's just dead weight," she whispered. They put me in a motel 2 hours away. I didn't tell them I still had the original property title because I'm Doris, 64 years old, from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I've spent my whole life here. My husband, Frank, and I built a simple life in a modest little house on Maple Street. Frank worked hard his whole life at the auto shop, and I spent most of my years working at the grocery store, ringing up neighbors and watching their kids grow up. Frank and I didn't have much, but we had each other, and that house was our home for over 40 years. When Frank passed away last summer from a heart attack, gone in a flash, no warning, I felt like the floor caved in beneath me. I was left alone in that empty house, staring at the walls, listening to the quiet. The worst part wasn't just the grief, it was the silence. Every little sound in the house felt like a ghost of what used to be. I tried to keep busy, but most days I just sat there staring out the window, watching the seasons change and wondering what the hell I was supposed to do next. That's when my son, Nathan, started calling more often. Nathan's my only child, my whole world really, ever since he was born. He's in his 30s now, married to a woman named Amber, with 2 little kids of their own. They live up in Chicago. Nathan told me he didn't want me to be alone, that he wanted me to come live with them. He said I could help out with the kids, be part of their family. I remember the exact words, "Mom, you're not going to sit there by yourself. We'll take care of you." Amber got on the phone too, acting all sweet, talking about how nice it would be to have me there. She said they'd set up the guest room for me. She even joked about how I could make my famous lasagna for the kids. I felt like a burden lifting off my chest. I thought, maybe this is the new chapter one need. So I started packing. It was hard, harder than I thought it would be. I sorted through 40 years of memories in that house. I sold the dining table where Frank and I ate dinner every night, the old recliner where he used to nap, the china cabinet we bought with our first tax return. I sold the bed we shared. I sold my car. I sold damn near everything, because I thought I wouldn't need it anymore. But the house? The house itself? That was different. I had the title tucked away in a safe deposit box at the bank, and even though Nathan and Amber told me I should just sign it over and let them handle the sale, I didn't. I couldn't. Something in my gut told me to hold on to it. I told myself it was just in case there was some paperwork, or something went wrong. But deep down, it was more than that. It was a little voice in the back of my head that said, "Don't let it go yet." The day I arrived in Chicago, I took a Greyhound with 2 suitcases and a framed picture of Frank. I was exhausted when I got to their house, standing on the stoop with my bags, heart pounding with nerves and hope. When Amber opened the door, her smile looked like it had been glued on. Nathan stood behind her, looking down at his phone. "Hi, Doris," Amber said, her voice tight. I stepped in, expecting to see the guest room ready, maybe a welcome sign from the kids. But the door barely opened. Amber didn't even let me get inside. We need to talk," she said, glancing at Nathan. My stomach dropped. Amber said, "Things have changed. We thought it over, and it's just not going to work having you stay here. The kids' schedules, my work-from-home setup, it's just too much. I hope you understand." I stood there, holding my bags, feeling like a fool. Nathan didn't say a word. He just stared at his phone, like he couldn't be bothered. Then, as if I wasn't even standing there, I heard Amber whisper to him under her breath, "She's just dead weight." I felt like I had been slapped across the face. My ears rang. My cheeks burned. They told me they'd already taken care of it. They booked a motel for me 2 hours away, some dumpy place off the interstate. They said they'd help me get settled there. They acted like it was all fine, like they were doing me a favor. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I just stood there, nodding like a damn fool. Nathan handed me a $50 bill for food and cab fare, like I was a homeless person begging on the street. Amber didn't even look at me. I left that night in a cab. They called for me. I sat in the back seat, staring out at the dark, holding back tears. When I got to the motel, I sat in the room. Stale air, a single flickering lamp, and the faint smell of mildew, and I realized I had been thrown away. But they didn't know I still had the title to the house. They thought I had handed it over, or maybe they thought they could forge my name. They had no idea I still held the legal key to that property. That's when I decided they were going to regret every single choice they made. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. For the first few nights in that motel, I hardly slept. I sat up on the edge of the bed, clutching the photo of Frank, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My own son had cast me aside like I didn't matter. And Amber, her words echoed in my head, she's just dead weight. I thought about how I used to babysit their kids for free, how I sent them grocery money during the pandemic, how I gave Nathan money for his first car. Now, they couldn't even give me a damn bed in their house. But I wasn't done. A few days after I got to the motel, I got a call from a realtor, some slick-sounding guy named Greg. He asked me if I was ready to finalize the paperwork for the sale of the house. I played dumb, asking him what sale he was talking about. Greg hesitated, then said, "Nathan told us you signed everything over and wanted the house sold quickly. We've got a buyer lined up." I felt my stomach twist. Nathan was trying to sell my house behind my back. My house. The place Frank and I built a life in. I told Greg, calm as I could, that there must have been a misunderstanding, that I hadn't signed anything, and I was still the legal owner. Greg's tone changed real fast after that. He said he'd double-check with Nathan and get back to me. That same night, I got a text from Nathan. It wasn't a "Hi Mom, how are you?" It was cold, straight to the point. "Why did you tell the realtor you didn't sign over the house? We agreed it was best for everyone. You're making things complicated. We need to move forward." I didn't respond. Instead, I called a lawyer, an old friend of Frank's, Ron, who used to play cards with us on Saturday nights. Ron wasn't fancy, but he knew the law, and more importantly, he knew me. I told him everything, every ugly detail. He listened, then said, "Doris, don't sign anything. Don't answer their calls. I'll handle it." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But it wasn't over. A few days later, Nathan showed up at the motel. He didn't call first, just barged in, banging on my door like the damn police. I opened it, and there he was, standing there with that fake, tense smile, acting like he was doing me a favor by showing up. "Mom, we need to talk," he said. I stepped aside, and he came in, pacing the room like he owned it. "Look, Amber's under a lot of stress. The kids are wild, and the house is too small for everyone. We can't have you living with us. It's not personal. But we have to sell the house. It's not fair to leave it sitting empty when we could use that money for the family." I stared at him, waiting for the part where he apologized, where he said he was sorry for throwing me out like trash. But it never came. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I already spent part of the advance from the sale. The buyer gave me a check for $10,000 to hold the property. Amber and I used it for the kids' school fees. "So, you need to sign the papers, okay?" That's when I realized this wasn't just about a misunderstanding. Nathan needed the sale to go through. He had already spent money that wasn't his. And now he expected me to clean up the mess. I sat there, silent, while he rattled off excuses. I could see the panic under his calm tone. Amber must have been in his ear, pressuring him to get it done. But I wasn't going to roll over. I told him flat out, "I'm not signing anything. That house is mine, and I'm going back." Nathan's face twisted into something I had never seen before, like he couldn't believe I had the nerve to stand up to him. He left that night without saying goodbye. The next morning, Amber called me, not to apologize, but to threaten me. I don't think you understand the position you're putting us in, she said, her voice cold. We're a family. You're making things harder for everyone. If you don't cooperate, we can't promise we'll be able to help you down the line. Help me? They had never helped me. They had used me. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to fight for the house. I was going to make sure they learned exactly what happens when you treat your own mother like trash. But I kept my mouth shut. Let them think I was scared, let them think I was helpless. I had a plan. And they were about to find out exactly what I was capable of. The weeks that followed were a blur of planning and waiting. I stayed in that motel, acting quiet, playing dumb, letting Nathan and Amber think I was just sitting there, lost and helpless. But I wasn't. I was working with Ron every single day. Ron helped me pull the property records. Turns out, Nathan had already forged my signature on a fake power of attorney document, an attempt to make it look like I had given him control of the property. He had submitted it to the realtor and the buyer, thinking he could pass it off without me ever knowing. That was fraud. Pure and simple. We built the case. I gave Ron every text, every voicemail, every email. I even had a recording from that night in the motel when Nathan admitted to taking the advance from the buyer. Ron filed a legal motion to block the sale. The court granted an emergency order, freezing everything. Nathan was officially screwed. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done. So I took it a step further. I reached out to the buyer directly, some couple from out of state who had been ready to close the deal. I told them the full story, every detail. They were furious. They threatened to sue Nathan for misrepresenting the property. The buyer's lawyer sent a formal notice to Nathan demanding the $10,000 advance back immediately, plus damages for breach of contract. Then I made one more call. The police. Fraud is a crime. Forging a legal document is a crime. Nathan was served with papers at his job. Amber got the news at home while the kids were eating breakfast. The police launched an investigation. Nathan and Amber tried to call me then, suddenly so eager to talk things out. I didn't answer. Instead, I went back to Cedar Rapids. I walked into my house, unlocked the front door, and stood in the middle of the empty living room, breathing in the familiar scent of old wood and carpet. It was mine. All of it. But I wasn't done yet. A few months later, after the legal dust settled, Nathan was forced to pay back the $10,000 advance plus additional damages. They had to take out a second mortgage on their house in Chicago just to cover the debt. Amber's family found out about everything, how they tried to con me, how they forged my signature, and they cut her off. Nathan lost his job after the fraud investigation came to light. Turns out, his employer didn't like the fact that he was facing criminal charges. He tried to blame me for ruining his life, but the truth was, he did it to himself. They had to sell their house in Chicago to cover legal fees. Moved into a rental in a bad part of town. Amber had to go back to work full-time, and Nathan ended up taking a job stocking shelves at a grocery store. I never saw them again after that. But it wasn't just them who learned a lesson. I learned one too. I learned that sometimes the people you love the most will betray you when they think they can get away with it. And I learned that I don't owe anyone a damn thing, not even my own son, if they treat me like garbage. I kept the house. Fixed it up. Rented out the extra room to a sweet college girl who treats me like family. I cook dinners for us sometimes, and we sit on the porch in the evenings, sipping tea and talking about life. I'm not rich, and I'm not young, but I've got my home, my dignity, and my peace. And that's more than enough for me. As for Nathan and Amber? Let them learn the hard way. I'm not dead weight. I'm the storm they never saw coming.